Season's greetings, hoop heads. It's basketball season and the holiday season. Our two favorite seasons. Welcome back to Jersey Jump Shot, the first and only podcast dedicated exclusively to college basketball in the Garden State. I'm Jerry Carino, and this is my 21st season covering the sport in this great state. With me, as always, is longtime colleague Steve Edelson, and with us is a player who has made history this season for the Princeton Tigers. And with Princeton's program, that is hard to do. Junior guard Xaivian Lee posted the program's first ever recorded triple-double earlier this month in a win at St. Joe's. 18 points, 13 rebounds, 10 assists, and it came against a good team in a hostile environment. Trust me, it was hostile. I was there. Princeton is now 8-4, and what a week this is because they take on Rutgers in a much-anticipated showdown Saturday at the Prudential Center. Xaivian, welcome to the Jersey Jump Shot.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on. So let's start with the history part of this. Triple-double. What does it mean to you to record the first triple-double in Princeton history? What was that like, and how did that happen in a place like St. Joe's?
I mean, yeah, it was awesome. That was one of my goals coming to the season. You know, Kate and I think both of our play styles, we do a little bit of everything. So we kind of were saying, like, oh, who's going to get the first one? We knew it was going to be one of us. So obviously that's not something you're really thinking about going into games or really in games either. But that's something that's kind of been on the back of my mind at least. And I thought I was close a couple times earlier in the season. But, a lot of that just kind of has to do with guys hitting shots. And at St. Joe's, we were really clicking. You know, Phil was hitting a lot of threes. All of our guys were hitting shots, Blake, Cade. So I always say the assist is kind of the part you don't have that much control over. And when your teammates are all, spot on a night like that, especially at St. Joe's, Hagan Arena, I think that's probably the craziest college basketball environment, maybe besides the tournament itself I've ever played in. And we've been there back-to-back years now, so that was definitely a nice one. I think it was kind of a storybook kind of place to get, especially coming off the loss we had there last year. Down the stretch, it was a very similar game. It felt almost the exact same. So,
right.
And it kind of just all came together at the very end with that kind of last play to Kate on the and one. So it's definitely a satisfying moment.
Xavier, what do you make of the Princeton season so far? A little bit of a roller coaster ride so far.
Yeah, I think that's what the non-conference is for, figuring stuff out. We got a lot of guys who are a little newer, haven't played as much, who are stepping into a lot bigger roles. So I think that's a little expected. Obviously, we want to win every game we play in, but especially compared to last year, we kind of have set this precedent of almost winning every single game, it felt like. So to kind of get off to a little rockier start is definitely an adjustment. But I think facing adversity earlier in the season is going to help us down the road. I think last year we didn't know how to come back, and this year that's kind of all we've been doing. We want to do that a little less, obviously, but down the line in the Ivy tournament when it really matters, I think we'll be comfortable in any situation, which is good. You can always look at things positively. That's how I'm looking at it. But we got a lot to improve on and areas to grow for sure.
You have your rivals in the Ivy League, obviously some great and storied rivalries with Penn, Harvard, Yale. But Rutgers, it's Rutgers week, Xavian. And as you know, these teams played for a long time and then didn't play for like 12 years. It came back last year. We'll get into last year's game in a minute. But what do you think of the opportunity to play Rutgers again? Like, what does that mean to everybody at Princeton?
We're super grateful to get a high caliber game like that. It's tough for us to schedule good games. So that one's definitely been circled on our calendar for the entire year. I'm just excited to compete. I think it's at the Prudential Center, right?
That's right.
It's a big environment as well. I'm sure it'll probably feel like an away game, to be honest. We're going to be on break by that point. We actually just finished up our exams this week. So kind of the whole school is taking a pause almost, but this is what we're kind of gearing up for right before Christmas. So I'm just excited, honestly. Everyone's going to be up for that game. They got 2 top 5 picks or whatever, some great players. So I think it should be a show for sure.
What stands out to you from that game from last year? That was a big early season win for you guys.
Yeah, it was the first game of our season. So I think that kind of just I think we didn't really know how good we were going into the season. That was kind of like a wake-up call. Like we could really do this. And especially for me personally, too, coming off, March Madness, and that was like our first game for me in a bigger role. It was kind of I think it invigorated us a little bit, like to get ready for the season. Also, last year was also probably our biggest opponent in non-conference. So it's definitely one that we're just amped up for.
Yeah, that was the coming out party for you for sure, and like really sent the signal that Princeton was going to be a team to be reckoned with last season. So now, this year, one of the key guys from that game has switched uniforms, Xaivian.
Yes,
Zach
sir.
Martini, and we know the Ivy League rules. Post grads are ineligible, so he had to play elsewhere. We know how much he loved it at Princeton. What's it going to be like seeing him on the other side? And give us a sense for what Zach's meant to Princeton's program.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be pretty weird. It's gonna be cool for sure. Zach comes back all the time. He's been here, 2-3 times. It's only one stop away, I guess. But even that just kind of shows how much Zach meant to Princeton and to us. And he was, the leader on our team. Him and Mush really kind of led us from the top. So it's gonna be weird to be playing against him. I just hope he doesn't get an offensive rebound because coach is not gonna let us get the end of that one. So it'll be cool. It'll be cool. We'll definitely know the scout on him.
Sure. And then, you got a good Zach Martini story. Did you go to his house for Thanksgiving last year? I know they had a bunch of players over. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, he only lives like a little less than an hour north of here. So it must have been 6 or 7 of us. We all went over to his house for Thanksgiving, had a great meal with his family. We were actually going to go again this year, but they were in Vegas during Thanksgiving, so we couldn't go. But, great family. And it was an awesome time last Thanksgiving. This Thanksgiving we went to the Hickeys down at the shore, so that was also a great experience. But obviously with the season and stuff, we can't go home, so it's really nice when guys extend their homes to us, and we kind of join their actual families for a little bit because at school it's just us. So yeah,
that's super cool. What was on the menu? I hear there was stuff other than turkey on the menu. Do you remember?
Yeah, they had mac and cheese. Jacob Huggins loves mac and cheese. He actually requested that 2 weeks prior. What else do they have? My personal favorite is the what is it? The yam sweet potato with the marshmallows on top, and they like roast it.
All right.
I'm pretty sure it's a staple, but I love that one wherever I go. So yeah,
good stuff. I couldn't argue with any of that stuff. Going on back to Rutgers now, Xaivian. What do you think of Dylan Harper and the opportunity to play against him? Everybody knows about him, obviously, but you're a point guard. He's a point guard. You're an NBA prospect. He's an NBA prospect. Give me the scout on him through your eyes.
For sure. I mean, he's a great player. I mean, I think he's won like player of the week or something. I think I saw that. I'm just up for the challenge, honestly. He's a big guard. He's been getting off, so excited to play against him. He was when I played in Hungary at the FIBA stuff 2 years prior in the summer. He played for USA, so we were all at the same hotel there. So it's kind of crazy how all that comes together later too.
Small world.
Yeah, small world for sure. Obviously back then he wasn't the prospect he is now, so it's always fun to play in a big environment against really good players on the biggest stages. So I'm just up for the challenge.
Did you catch their game against Seton Hall and his game-winning shot? I mean, it's probably hard to miss.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Hopefully, they get all their shots out in that game before they play us.
Yeah, I'm curious what you thought of the Monmouth guard Abdi Bashir, who you saw earlier this year. Has kind of burst on the scene this season.
Yeah, really good player. He was giving us a lot of problems. He could score. He could flat out score. He can move. Cool guy too. I remember we were talking a little bit in the Monmouth game. Usually I don't really talk to their team, but we're kind of chatting here and there. Good guy, good player. I'm excited for him. Obviously next year, probably we'll see what happens with him, but he's really setting himself up nicely.
Is there a little camaraderie or kinship there because he was pretty under recruited? You were under recruited. Is there something to be said for these guys who are proving people wrong? That's probably a good feeling when you see a guy like that make it like you have.
For sure. He's also, I'm not sure if I'm mistaken, but I think he's Somalian. And where I'm from, Toronto, there's a huge Somalian population. And, a lot of guys I grew up hooping with were Somalian. So it's kind of cool to see a guy like that exceeding at one of the highest levels. It's kind of similar to my story a little bit. So, definitely a lot of shared respect there.
I know you've talked about this and we've asked this question, but I think it's interesting to bring up in this, in these changing times. And King Rice had mentioned about Abdi Bashir that people are already calling him and trying to get him to transfer in between semesters, which is wild. Really blows everybody's mind.
Yes.
Princeton has been this model of player retention, right? And with you and Caden Pierce at the forefront of that. What is it about Princeton, or why did you guys buck the trend? I mean, what's the value of staying at Princeton? Give us a little insight into how that works from your end in the offseason.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I can't speak for Monmouth, but for Princeton and Cade and I's story, obviously the easy thing or kind of the traditional thing to say is Princeton's such a great school. Why would you leave? How could you ever leave? But I think honestly it's a little naive to say that in today's day and age when there's so much at your doorstep just in the portal. The opportunities are crazy. But for Cade and I think a lot more of it was about the culture of our basketball program. Honestly, obviously there's a long-term investment with the school and it's a great degree. But for us, I think we really looked at where we could grow the most, where we felt the most comfortable leading and progressing as people and players. And for us, Princeton basketball has been nothing but great to us. So we want to run it back and see what we could do in our junior year. And for me, just basketball-wise, I want to be somewhere where I could play freely and play through mistakes and grow and become a leader and not be worried about, other transfers coming in, kind of having to learn a new system and all that. So obviously there's pros and cons to everything. But for us, we thought, Princeton was the right place for us from a life perspective and a basketball perspective.
That's really interesting. And we appreciate your honesty about like the basketball nature of it being so important, because this is really, this is your future, right? So, but it's fascinating what you said about like being able to play freely and not have to worry about, other people transferring in or being, having to look over your shoulder. Fit is so important. Like we don't maybe discuss that enough in college basketball.
100%.
Like, fit is important. Like this is your team for you and Cade. This is your team. You have a big stake in this team, like the way it's run. I'm sure you do a lot of work with Mitch, game planning and whatnot. So there's something to be said for that. It seems like maybe we don't talk about that enough in the sport.
Yeah, I think a lot of what goes into success is just your confidence on the court and the role you have on your team. Obviously, if I went somewhere else, I'd love to be in the same role, but
right,
being somewhere where you know how it's going to be and you feel comfortable playing and you have rapport with the coaching staff and your players already, it speaks a lot to playing well as well. I think all that goes into playing well. And I think biggest thing I've learned in college basketball is really your mindset and confidence is what's going to set you apart. Like at this point, Division I players, obviously some are a lot talented than others, but for the most part, it's pretty even playing field. A lot of it comes down to how confident you are and your freedom on the court.
Right, that's a great point.
What's it been like learning the game under Mitch Henderson?
It's been good. It's been cool. He's a great basketball mind. Sometimes it seems like he thinks a lot faster than we do. Yeah, I've definitely learned a lot by diffusion from just being around him in all of our lengthy film sessions, on-court stuff. Yeah, and I think he's a unique coach because he kind of just teaches us how to play and kind of just installs offensive principles almost and lets us play through them, which is, I think, unique for a college coach.
What's the most important thing you think you've learned from him?
The most important thing I've learned. Make the little plays that contribute to winning. 50-50 balls. Obviously, it's kind of cliche to say, but after every game we watch, we call it 4 to 5 plays that shifted the game's momentum or what he thinks led to who won the game. And usually those plays are ones that aren't on the highlights or that regular people would just pay attention to during a game. They're like little, a stop here, sticking a close out there, grabbing this board. So kind of, I would say, honestly, understanding what it takes to win basketball games. I think that's what I've learned in my college career.
Does he still have game?
A little bit, yeah. Sometimes he'll be like, bring it in and then shoot over someone and hit a 3 or something. But yeah, he has the best chest pass I've ever seen out of anyone. Honestly, like I didn't realize how like little people could actually throw a proper chest pass, like snapping it off, not throwing it like that. But he has one of the best ones.
He snaps his wrist still when he throws a pass, right?
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive. All right, good stuff. So Mitch can still play, but he won't dare try to take you guys on in one-on-one or horse, will he?
He'll play some horse. I don't know if We'll have to ask him. I don't know if he'll play us at ones. That would be a little
He
crazy.
won't. He won't do that. He won't do that. I want to tell you what. I wouldn't want to play Mitch and Horse though. And Mitch can shoot, man. I'm sure you've heard the stories.
Yeah.
Maybe you've seen the old reel to reels from his college days. Does he ever talk about Coach Carrill? What it was like to be coached by Pete Carrill? Does it ever come up?
A little bit here and there, yeah.
Those were different. Those were different times, man. Coach Carrill was in those guys' faces, but the principles, like the how to play the game right, are still embedded deeply in the program. All right, last question. Give us a sense for what it's like around final exam time at Princeton. You said you're just wrapping up now, balancing the books and basketball. Like, what's your life like in a week like this?
Not fun. Definitely not fun. Thankfully we have a little breaking game, so we kind of use that time to just catch up because we're traveling a lot in the prior weeks. And then most guys usually have anywhere between 1 to 3 exams. So it's kind of just a rough period, and you're kind of in the library a lot, trying to catch up, trying to just study and do as well as you can. But yeah, it's definitely our toughest week academically.
You're an economics major, right?
Yeah, Kate and I just had our econometrics exam on Saturday morning.
What subject was that?
Econometrics.
I have no idea what that is. Can you explain to Steve and I what that is?
Shoot, I don't even know if I can. It's kind of like stats and economics combined with math and code a little bit. It's probably the hardest course we'll have to take, but we're done now, so can just focus on Rutgers, thankfully, because the past couple days were a little bit of a grind.
All right, we'll let you get some rest. Really, thank you, Xaivian. This is super stuff to get the insight into your game, the program, and what life's like over there. Super appreciate you coming on. We will see you on the court Saturday. Looking forward to it.
For sure. Appreciate you guys having me.
All right, thanks a lot. That was Xaivian Lee, and he's had a terrific career at Princeton. He's going to play basketball and get paid for it for a long time. Going to be a pro, and he's got a triple-double to his name, and it'll be fascinating. We'll get into this in a little bit, Steve. It'll be fascinating to watch him and Dylan Harper against each other on Saturday. I mean, what a great showcase of Jersey point guards.
Oh, it's going to be amazing. I mean, the rock is going to be rocking. I really think it really is. I mean, last year was an interesting game. I think this year is even more interesting. With the stars that Rutgers has, and the way Princeton has played in recent years, it's going to be a great game.
All right, so we'll get into that in a little bit. I want to jump right to Rutgers-Seton Hall first, since that we were both there on Saturday. It's still fresh in the mind. Let's review this quickly, Steve. Your big takeaway from Rutgers winning this game by 3 at the buzzer on Saturday at the Rocking Rack.
Yeah, I think another step in the process of a young team learning to close games out, beat teams. Again, they were expected to win. They did win. Maybe it wasn't as impressive as some people thought it should have been. But again, I think it's a step forward for this team, and that's what they had to do.
Like, these are the emotional ups and downs you're going to get with a young freshman-driven team, right? I thought so. Rutgers was embarrassed at Ohio State. And then they come out and play this tremendous game against Penn State, like really fired on all cylinders, both ends, toughness, offensive execution, defense, rebounding, the whole bit, right? Played a great game. And then I thought it almost felt like, this is not true for the Steve Peichel, obviously, but it felt like the players were like overly satisfied. There was like a celebratory feel, like, look what we did, beating Penn State. And it was a very good and important win. But you almost felt like, are these guys not going to be ready for Seton Hall, especially since they don't know anything really about the Seton Hall rivalry. So you kind of did feel that was possible. And this is a young team. This is what you're going to get, Like Geo Baker and Ron Harper and Caleb McConnell, like they were not going to do that as seniors, but these guys are freshmen. So they come in, I think, really not ready for Seton Hall's physicality. Penn State's a soft, skilled team. Seton Hall is less skilled, but very tough and in your face. And they came in unready for that. It took them like 30 minutes to adjust to Seton Hall's punching them in the throat out of the gate, busting up their ball screens. And they did because, they got some star power. They did adjust. But you do wonder, that's going to be just the emotional ups and downs. Like they obviously were not ready after the big Penn State win. This is going to be the season, man. When you have a freshman-driven team, you're going to have there's talent like this, you're going to have tremendous moments like Penn State, and you're going to have some head scratchers. But to their credit, they did win. And I would just encourage Rutgers fans to just take a breath because they did win the game. They did win the game. It was a good game, too, aside from all the missed free throws, which were horrendous on both sides. I mean, just brutal. It was a really hard fought, the intensity in that second half was off the charts.
Yeah.
And so
the late game heroics is something that can propel you forward. It's so dramatic.
That's an epic all-time moment. I mean, some people have been asking me, where does that rank in the biggest plays of the series? It's number one. I mean, that you have a 30-foot, 28-foot buzzer beater. That's against your rival. That's one. That's one. So I know J.R. Inman had one in 2008, but that was the last game of the season where Rutgers was playing out the string. Seton Hall also wasn't going nowhere. This was different. Rutgers a lot at stake here. And so I think it was the number one moment. Now, game-wise, it was one of the better games because of the competition, the intensity, the surprise factor, so the swings in the game. So I say just take a deep breath. You're going to have ups and downs. They got the win. They're going to have bad losses. They're going to have great wins. They're going to beat some teams when they're going to look like dynamite. The question is, can they rack up enough of those to get to March, and can they finally click in March, having all this, much more game experience under their belt? But I would say they got the win. We understand this team has things they have to work on, but they did. It's a rivalry game, and you got to throw a lot of stuff out the window as far as the style points in a game like that. I also want to mention Jordan Durkat because I'm hearing a lot of Rutgers is a two-man team, and listen, they are a team driven by two stars. Jordan Durkak's been a good player for them. He had 9 and 5, 9 points, 5 rebounds. They don't win that game without him. He provides this added element of toughness that they need that maybe those two freshmen don't have yet. They have everything else. So I don't think it's a two-man driven team, but it's not that they don't have nobody else. Jordan Durkak's having a good season, Steve. He's been a key factor for them.
Yeah, and it's nice to see a player from a low major come in and have a real nice impact like he's having. I remember seeing him for the first time this summer playing at Jersey Shore League, and he was so impressive. And you just have seen it now translate into making big plays for Rutgers.
Yeah, I do. So and it's great also that he's local, he's from Middlesex County, and he went to Colonial High School as a 4-year public school guy, which is pretty cool. And you don't see a lot of that on this level anymore. But let me tell you something. There's a lot of high majors that would love to have Jordan Durkak in their mix right now. And so I reject this idea that Rutgers is a two-man team. They obviously need more help from the other guys. But he is pulling his weight, and they're not winning some of these games without him. They're not beating Notre Dame. They're not beating Seton Hall without him. So I just want to throw a little bone to him. Your big takeaway on Seton Hall, Steve?
My big takeaway from Seton Hall is I really, really like what I'm seeing from Isaiah Coleman. I mean, I think he's really starting to play well. 15 points, 10 boards, 4 steals. He really kept them in the game for a lot of that game. So I think if you can get Chauncey Jenkins back on track, maybe and can play with the intensity at both ends of the court, the defensive intensity, the ball movement on offense, I think you have a chance to win some Big East games.
Isaiah Coleman is becoming a star. And we kind of saw this last year a little bit. The way he handled that 6-man role where he was really pressed into a lot of service with an experienced team and helped Seton Hall, win 25 games. You saw this potential in him, right? And he's becoming a star. He missed a lot of the summer, which is why he got off to a slow start with various ailments. So they have a star in the making here. My biggest takeaway from Seton Hall is they're playing better. And the biggest thing is these sophomores are playing better. Garway Duell is starting to assert himself on both ends. He was extremely disruptive. We'll get into the last play in a minute. He was extremely disruptive for most of that game. He also was breaking guys down off the dribble and passing the ball well. The last 3 halves, the ball movement has gotten better as Duell has gotten better as a point guard. And so Seton Hall finally shared the ball pretty well on offense, and he was a big part of that. Manny Okorafor won his matchup for the first time. He's a center who missed 5 weeks when he was hospitalized for dehydration and various fallout from that. So these guys are sophomores. You add in Scotty Middleton, who clearly has talent. that's a nucleus of sophomores. And for anyone who would say, like, Seton Hall season's over, okay, yeah, are they going to the NCAA tournament? No, and nor do we expect them to in the beginning of the season. However, you have this nucleus of sophomores, and it will be really interesting to see with Big East play, beginning this week against Villanova and Georgetown. 2 winnable games. Like, they'll be underdog Seton Hall, but it's not impossible. If they play like they did against Rutgers, they could be in those games. But the key is, can Shaheen Holloway develop these sophomores and keep them? Can you get a nucleus together? That was always the card here for Seton Hall to play, Steve. For 2 years, they were never going to do anything with this mishmash, brand new, very young group this year. They have some postgrads to help them sort of transition, but the whole idea behind this was, can Holloway develop these sophomores over 2 years? You're not going to get 3 years with anybody anymore, any group of guys like he did at St. Peter's, but you saw the work he did in 2 years with Al Dawes, Dre Davis, Kadari Richmond. Look at what year 2 was like under Shah for them. Can this group get to that, make a movement like that? This group of sophomores, maybe they won't be quite as good as those 3 guys, but can they get Seton Hall into contention? That with those guys, you got to develop them, and that's what this year's for. And then you got to keep them, and that's going to be important, obviously, in the off season. But that's really, if you're a Seton Hall fan looking for a ray of light, looking for hope, that's where it is, and that's why these games do matter. Can these guys develop over the course of 20 Big East games? It's a real opportunity for them. I want to say another thing about Holloway. I thought he coached a brilliant game until the last 6 seconds. The preparation was top shelf. Got to give credit to Ryan Whalen for the scouting report. He's a master tactician, assistant coach. I know Princeton is going to school on Seton Hall's ball screen coverage, how they busted up Rutgers' ball screens and really busted up their offense for much of that game. Made those 2 guys beat them with individual plays, individual talent. Holloway did a good game. His guys were ready. They played their rear ends off. The strategy was superb. The last 6 seconds, you would have probably, in retrospect, like to have seen Seton Hall double Dylan Harper right on the inbounds pass, right, Steve? And either deny him the ball or trap him in the corner and make him pass it when he got it.
Right. You had to make it harder for him, other than literally just catching the ball and racing down court and launching a wide open shot. Right. I mean, there had to be at some point pressure on him.
Yeah, and Garway Duell, who played a tremendous defensive game, got beat there, and he's backpedaling, trying to prevent Harper from driving past him, because Dylan easily could have driven past him to the bucket. He had enough time to get to the rim in 6 seconds. So he was backpedaling, but not having 2 guys there really cost the Pirates. So that was a tough ending to what I thought was a really well coached. Like you saw from much of that game, you saw all of Holloway's best attributes. So there were some positives to take away. And can Seton Hall now turn that into some better play in the Big East? That's the question. Okay, so they had that coming up. They got Villanova and Georgetown, and they haven't won a game at Villanova in the Pavilion in 30 years. I was there, Steve. I was a young man in February of '94, sitting high in the Villanova student section. And having made the trip from South Orange, I was there. And, I can tell you that, like, Seton Hall fans at the time thought, hey, this is just what Seton Hall does, right? Well, 30 years have passed, and they have not won there since.
Well, I tell you what, the Big East is wide open. I think that's what makes Seton Hall's situation so intriguing. I mean, yeah, they're long shots, but listen, it's a wide open league. And if you play like you did against Rutgers, and you could beat Villanova.
Yeah, the league's not that good. I mean, you say wide open, that's nice of you. They're not that good this year. They're down, and so there's some room to move. There's some room to win some games, and that's the thing. It's not like you're not going to win any games. They're going to win some games. Can they get started? Shaheen Holloway is going to say new season. That's going to be his big thing. His mantra is going to be it's a new season. That's what he does every year around this time. And if you notice, his teams have turned the corner around this time every year. Last year with the big win over UConn, the year before winning at Rutgers. This is about the time you see a leap ahead from them. I want to mention one other thing about the Hall. They played their best basketball away from home, which is interesting. They played those 2 good games in Charleston, really good game beating VCU, and then played really well in their first road game at Rutgers. You wonder how much that is in the mindset. Are players pressing at home? Are they nervous at home? Is a home environment making them nervous for some reason? Some teams take on that mentality. And so it'd be fascinating to see if if they can continue that road warrior mentality at Villanova, So that's something to keep an eye on as well. Seton Hall's played better away from home, which is really interesting. So let's talk about the Princeton-Rutgers game, and then we'll run down the rest of the state rather. All right, Princeton at Rutgers, noon at the Prudential Center. Rutgers going to have, they'll have thousands of fans there. I do hear Princeton will have some fans. I think they could have 1,000 fans there. When they played last year, Princeton had no fans, which is really embarrassing for Princeton, and the program deserved better. It does sound like they will have a representative. They're not going to go 50-50 with Rutgers, but it sounds like they could get 1,000 people in the building, which at least will give them a presence. Steve, when you see this game, what do you think?
I think it's another growth opportunity for Rutgers. I mean, they survived the Shaheen Holloway meat grinder. Now they get a whole different look at it, I think a neutral court against a dangerous opponent like Princeton. Yeah, I think they're going to have to play good, and it's going to be another good thing to kind of launch them into Big Ten play.
Right, good point. Like, this is a polar opposite team from Seton Hall. This team will torch you with it from distance. I'm going to read Princeton's 3-point shooting percentages. Okay, Xaivian Lee shooting 40% from 3-point range. Dalen Davis is shooting 39.7%. Caden Pierce is shooting 37.5%. Blake Peters is shooting 39.5%. That's their core group. And then this guy, no one's heard of Philip Byriel probably, but he's a 6'9" senior. He's shooting 40% from 3. He is absolutely killed St. Joe's. So Princeton will torch a team from 3 if they let him. And I saw that St. Joe's game. It was the best game Princeton played all year. It was winning at St. Joe's, and they torched St. Joe's from the arc. And if they shoot like that against Rutgers, they're going to score 80 points. Now, maybe Rutgers scores 90 or 95. They're going to score 80-plus points against Rutgers if Rutgers doesn't defend the arc better than it's been. You can't miss assignments and hope these guys miss Princeton. They're probably not going to miss. So could they have a cold game? Sure. But there's 5 guys on that court who can drill you from deep, and that's why Princeton is so dangerous. Now, on the other end, they're not a great defensive team, and although they're going to try to go to school on what Seton Hall did, they might not have the personnel to do those same things. The physicality, the burst that some of those Seton Hall guys have, they might not have that Princeton. So it's a totally different type of game and a different type of test for Rutgers for sure. And for Princeton, look, this is a great game for Princeton to test themselves. These are the types of games, like Xavian pointed out. This is where you get ready for league play, which is everything for them. So they won't see 2 players like Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey anywhere near like that in the Ivy League. And so this is I don't think Xavian is going to be assigned to defend Dylan Harper. I think Princeton's going to try to let him, I don't want to say rest on the defensive end, but he has so much to do responsibility-wise offensively. I think they'll assign him to someone else. I don't know who they're going to assign to defend Dylan Harper. I don't think it'll be Lee, except maybe in some special situations, or of course he might end up on him in some switches. Will Harper defend Lee? Probably some, not the entire game. Steve will probably send out JaMychal Davis at first on him. They'll maybe Jeremiah Williams, maybe Dirk Hack. They'll use different people on Lee. I don't foresee Harper Lee squaring off like head-to-head a whole lot, but still they're both going to be on the court a lot and be determining factors for their teams. I also want to say this is great that this game is being played, Steve. You and I have banged the drum a long time for in-state series like Princeton, Monmouth have this great thing going. FDU and St. Peter's have a nice thing going. Like, this is important for New Jersey basketball, right, Steve?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think kind of the catalyst was Princeton's run in the NCAA tournament a couple of years ago. That kind of opened everyone's eyes and it's like, well, Rutgers should be playing these guys again. And, teams from New Jersey should be playing, because look at how good the level of basketball is with FDU and St. Peter's going to the tournament. So, I think the last few years have been great for New Jersey basketball from that perspective.
So when Steve came in here from Stony Brook, he was definitely like, why do we want to play these teams? I'm kind of stuck playing Seton Hall. I'll deal with it, I guess. And I'm not quoting him, but I'm giving you what I think his mindset was, and having gotten to know him pretty well. And then, why would I want to reopen the rivalry against Princeton? It's a no-win situation. And Steve has evolved from that. And I think part of it is now, like he's been living here 9 years, and he understands the state. He's become an honorary New Jerseyan, 9 years is a long time to coach in one place in this sport. And so he's become an honorary New Jerseyan. He understands the importance of this game. His older fans, Rutgers' older fans, the ones who are filling that 100 level at the rack, the ones who are in the court club and donating and being at all these events, it means a lot to those fans, these traditional games. And he has acknowledged that, and I give him a lot of credit. It would have been really easy to cut the cord on this Princeton game after the losing to the Tigers last year. I know it really stuck in everybody's craw that Princeton won that game, and Princeton was the better team last year. That was the preview of it. But to Steve's credit, he re-upped it. And Mitch Henderson, he'll play them anywhere. The guy will play anybody on the moon. I mean, to go to St. Joe's twice and then get a dime in return, Steve, not a dime of guarantee money, not a home game return, not a neutral game return. They went there to compete, and so it's a beautiful thing, right?
Amazing. Yeah. Listen, Princeton, and you have to love Princeton with the anyone, anywhere, anytime mentality. That's the way they have to be.
Kings like that too at Monmouth. We'll get into him in a second, but so this is a great game. I'm so glad it's still here. I think Steve really has embraced this part of being at the center of New Jersey basketball. Being the coach of the State's University, and I really hope it continues. I think a big part of this, the future of this game, is going to be Princeton getting some fans out to these sites, and hopefully it sounds like they'll do better with that this time. Rutgers fans will show up. So really looking forward to that game. Rutgers will be favored. They deserve to be favored. But as everybody knows, Princeton gets hot, they could beat you. And so that's what makes this game intriguing. All right, let's talk Fairfield at Monmouth. Monmouth's finally home, right, Steve, on Saturday, and they get a decent Fairfield team.
Yeah, 47 days have passed since the opening day of the college basketball season, and Monmouth will finally play its first home game. 11 games away from home or neutral court. They got Fairfield Saturday in West Long Branch, and listen, they're going to have to play good, right? Fairfield's got to win over Vermont. They lost to St. Peter's in the MAC final last year. Monmouth's going to have to play well. And listen, King Rice has been very open about Monmouth needing to play, guarantee money games. In fact, he's been quoted as saying $435,000 is what they brought in this year, playing 5 guaranteed games. So, listen, they're 1-10. They've taken their lumps. But listen, now it's time to show that you've kind of learned from all of that, and you're going to have to play good and beat Fairfield.
How about Xaivian Lee saying you really liked Abdi Bashir? You liked him as a person. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, and they were you could see them during the game. If someone was shooting a free throw, they would be kind of standing near center court, kind of talking to each other. I was noticing that as the game went on. So, yeah, I think that he probably sees him as a kindred spirit.
Right. There's mutual respect for sure, but also beyond the mutual respect, yes, it's that they have taken somewhat similar paths, right? Lightly recruited. They become the face of their mid-major programs. They're both really, really good, and they're asked to do a lot. And good guys. And so that's pretty cool. And I like Steve, this is why covering college basketball is great, right? You have personality, you have storylines, you have, young people growing into adulthood in the spotlight and sometimes doing pretty cool or amazing things. It's special in that way. There's a lot of changes in the sport that we've noted many times, but that's still a pretty cool thing to have a front row seat for, to watch the Xavians and Abdis do their thing and develop a rapport too. Pretty cool.
And Abdi Bashir, I think, has been a great addition for New Jersey college basketball fans this year, who have gotten to see him in a lot of games and see how good he really is. And last year it was all about Xander Rice, and Abdi was kind of a second act there. Now he's a star, and he's really stepped up.
Yeah, some really big time guard play in New Jersey this year. Throw in Tariq Francis at NJIT as well. All right, so. St. Pete, let's just run down the mid-majors. It's been really a tough year, aside from Princeton, who's doing okay. They're doing fine. It's been a tough year for the other mid-majors so far. St. Peter's is 0-2 in the MAC, 4-5 overall. They lost to Manhattan and Iona to open the league play. They host Delaware Friday. FDU is 4-8. They lost only by 14 at Villanova. They were in that game for a long time. They were right there for pretty much a half. Now FDU at Villanova, at LaSalle, at Minnesota, at Boston College. Again, with King Rice, same thing. They got to make money somehow, right?
Yep.
That's where it's at. Okay, and then Ryder 4-7, 0-2 in the MAC. They're at Penn Friday. NGIT's 2-11 after a well-played game at Wagner, lost by 7. They get 2 weeks off, and they're at Washington. Struggling across the mid-major land in New Jersey, aside from Princeton. However, as we know, league play is where it's at for those guys, and holiday season is where it's at for us. But we will, I think, Steve, be back for one short show. We do want to talk Rutgers-Princeton, Seton Hall, Georgetown at the beginning of next week. So look for one short, probably no guest. Look for a little holiday, pre-holiday eggnog, not eggnog fueled. I hope not. Drop in.
You never know.
Drop in early next week. Until then, should be a fun week of games. Enjoy it. Thanks for being with us as always. We'll keep you posted, fellow hoop heads. This is our time, and we'll see you soon on the Jersey Jump Shot.